The officer swaggered up, smirking at the fancy car he thought didn't belong to her. But the woman inside wasn't one to bow down. She rolled down the window, fire in her eyes. "Is there a problem, officer?" Moments later, when she stepped out in her army uniform, the tables turned fast. The late afternoon sun painted the highway gold as a sleek black luxury sedan sliced through the quiet suburban road. Behind the tinted glass, Major Vanessa Brooks sat tall, her posture straight, her eyes steady. The hum of the engine was more than sound. It was freedom earned after years of sacrifice. She had just returned from a week-long military seminar in D.C., still in her off-duty attire, crisp white blouse, minimal jewelry, quiet grace. Her playlist, smooth jazz and soft piano, floated in the air as houses blurred past. For a moment, she allowed herself to breathe, something soldiers rarely do in peace. But behind her, a pair of flashing red and blue lights suddenly shattered the calm. Her eyes flicked to the mirror. A police cruiser. She frowned. Her speed was legal. Her tags were clean. Still, she slowed and pulled to the side, exhaling through her nose. "Here we go again." Officer Dan McCarthy stepped out of his cruiser with that familiar swagger, the kind that comes from authority mixed with unchecked ego. His sunglasses reflected the shine of her car as he walked up slowly, tapping his ticket pad against his palm. Inside the sedan, Vanessa watched through the mirror, reading his body language before he even spoke. He wasn't here for a traffic violation. She'd seen this face before. The smirk, the disbelief, the silent question. How could she afford this? McCarthy leaned toward the open window and spoke in that forced casual tone officers use when they've already decided the outcome. "Afternoon, ma'am. Nice ride you got here. Mind telling me where you're headed?" His eyes scanned the interior, lingering on the leather, the badge keychain, the military duffel on the seat beside her. Vanessa didn't flinch. "Home," she replied coolly. "That a problem?" The corner of his mouth twitched. "Not yet," he said, his gaze narrowing. Vanessa's patience thinned as he circled the car, pretending to inspect it like a suspect vehicle. He asked for her license, then questioned the address, then commented, almost playfully, on how fancy the car was for someone like her. The insult wasn't hidden. It was gift-wrapped in arrogance. Vanessa leaned back, watching him, her fingers tightening around the steering wheel. "Someone like me?" she finally asked, her voice firm but calm. He shrugged, smirking. "You know, not every day I see this kind of car in this neighborhood. Thought I'd make sure everything's legit." The nerve, the ignorance, the restraint it took for her to stay composed was the discipline of a soldier. "Everything is legit," she said evenly. "You done?" He looked almost amused. "Step out of the vehicle, ma'am." Her heart slowed, not from fear, but from focus. She glanced at her rearview mirror, catching her own eyes. This isn't new, she thought, but this time it's going to end differently. With a deep breath, Vanessa unbuckled her seatbelt and opened the door. The late afternoon calm of the neighborhood began to crumble as Major Vanessa Brooks stepped out of her black car, her posture sharp, her chin lifted. She wasn't in uniform yet, just a strong, confident black woman standing her ground. Officer Dan McCarthy squared his shoulders, towering over her as if height could substitute for respect. His radio crackled and a few passing cars slowed down, their drivers glancing curiously. "You mind telling me why you're giving me attitude?" he barked. Vanessa crossed her arms, unimpressed. "You stopped me because you assumed I didn't belong behind that wheel. That's not attitude, officer. That's observation." Her tone cut like glass. The officer's face flushed. He leaned closer, lowering his voice but raising his ego. "Watch that mouth, ma'am. I can make your day a whole lot harder." Her eyes didn't move. "I've faced worse threats in war zones," she said quietly. "You're just noise." The late afternoon calm of the neighborhood began to crumble as Major Vanessa Brooks stepped out of her black car, her posture sharp, her chin lifted. She wasn't in uniform yet. Just a strong, confident black woman standing her ground. Officer Dan McCarthy squared his shoulders, towering over her as if height could substitute for respect. His radio crackled and a few passing cars slowed down, their drivers glancing curiously. "You mind telling me why you're giving me attitude?" he barked. Vanessa crossed her arms, unimpressed. "You stopped me because you assumed I didn't belong behind that wheel. That's not attitude, officer. That's observation." Her tone cut like glass. The officer's face flushed. He leaned closer, lowering his voice but raising his ego. "Watch that mouth, ma'am. I can make your day a whole lot harder." Her eyes didn't move. "I've faced worse threats in war zones," she said quietly. "You're just noise." Vanessa turned toward her car, her movements slow and deliberate. The officer thought she was complying, but what she did next froze him in place. She opened the back door and pulled out a neatly pressed U.S. Army uniform, hung carefully on a hanger. She shook it slightly, letting the sunlight hit the medals and insignia. Gasps rippled through the crowd. McCarthy blinked, confused. Vanessa then took off her blazer, revealing the Army undershirt beneath. The transformation was instant. Authority radiated from her stance. "You want to see ID?" she said, voice clear and steady. "Here's all the ID you'll ever need." The officer's face drained of color. He took a step back, realizing what stood before him. Not a random driver, but a decorated soldier who had served the very flag on his uniform. The crowd erupted. Some clapped, some recorded in awe. McCarthy's radio buzzed again, but he didn't move. His arrogance evaporated into shame. Vanessa folded her arms, her gaze piercing. "Now, officer," she said softly, "do you still think this car doesn't belong to someone like me?" The question hung in the air like a verdict. Undeniable, powerful, final. The sun had started to sink, painting the street in amber light, but no one moved. The silence after Vanessa's words was deafening. Officer Dan McCarthy stood frozen, his authority stripped bare under the weight of her uniform's shine. A teenager shouted from the sidewalk, "She's a soldier, man. Show some respect." Others joined in, murmuring, clapping, recording every second. The officer fumbled with his radio, mumbling something about procedure, but it was too late. The world around him had already chosen its side. Vanessa, calm and composed, stepped forward, her boots clicking against the pavement. "You wanted to question who I am," she said, her voice carrying over the murmurs. "Now, you know who protects your freedom, and your right to judge me." The line hit harder than any command she'd ever given. People nodded, phones raised higher. The officer's posture sagged as realization sank in. He hadn't just pulled over a woman. He had exposed his prejudice to an entire neighborhood. By the next morning, the clip had flooded the internet. Millions of views, thousands of comments, and headlines screaming across platforms. "Cop stops Black Army officer, instantly regrets it." The footage was everywhere. The arrogance, the silence, and that powerful moment when Vanessa revealed her uniform. The department scrambled into damage control, issuing statements about ongoing investigation and commitment to equality. But the people weren't buying it. For once, justice didn't need a courtroom. It was playing out online and everyone had front-row seats. Meanwhile, Vanessa sat quietly in her kitchen, sipping black coffee as the morning news played her own face on screen. Her phone buzzed nonstop, messages from fellow soldiers, journalists, even kids who called her their hero. She smiled faintly but said nothing. She hadn't done it for fame. She did it because silence had never protected anyone. On her fridge hung a note she'd written years ago during deployment. "Courage is doing what's right when no one's clapping." Now, millions were. A week later, the police chief publicly apologized. McCarthy, the once proud officer, stood beside him, eyes downcast, suspended pending review. Cameras flashed, microphones pointed, but Vanessa declined to attend the press event. She was elsewhere, standing at a local high school auditorium in full uniform, addressing a hall filled with young students. She told them the story, not with anger, but with purpose. "People will judge you before they know you," she said softly. "Let your truth be louder than their ignorance." The crowd listened, eyes wide, hearts full. "Respect," she continued, "isn't something you demand. It's something you earn, and something you defend, even when it's denied to you." As she stepped off the stage, a young black girl ran up, saluted, and whispered, "I want to be like you someday." Vanessa knelt, smiling warmly. "Then promise me," she said, "you'll never let anyone decide your worth." The applause that followed wasn't for a viral hero. It was for a soldier who reminded the world that dignity wears no color.